All right, guys, welcome back again for the next 2 episodes of TEACUP, episodes 3 and 4. I know a lot of people haven't expressed a lot of love for the show, but it seems to be winning over most of you guys, which is pretty dope because I think it's a pretty decent show, honestly. And I'm just looking forward to seeing more of you guys' thoughts currently on the show. I know some people weren't really too happy about decisions between Maggie and James cheating on her with Valeria and all this other crazy stuff, but you guys already know men do crazy shit regardless of how women look sometimes. I mean, you know, everything's subjective, but I'm just saying maybe there's some more context to why James chose Valeria. It might not even really have much to do with looks, although I don't think Valeria looks bad at all, but hey, it is what it is. But there were a lot of crazy and interesting moments throughout this episode that we're definitely going to get into, so let's go ahead and start. So the episode begins with showing us different shots around the farm of the swings and the barn and out in the woods and stuff like that. But one of the major shots that we get to see that we definitely need to take note of is that we get to see that the mysterious man who drew the line actually had enough time to draw a pretty huge barrier around the whole farm. Now, of course, this was already implied with the whiteboard, but we actually get to see that visually of the shot out in the woods. And then we end up cutting to Donald, who just looks like he's been through hell, which he has, and we get to see him still sitting by the line where he has been all night alone, staring at his wife Claire's mutilated, statued body. Man. So we end up cutting to a morning shot of James hopping up out the bed and Maggie still lying there, because keep in mind, Maggie already knows about the situation, so of course she's feeling some type of way because she knows that it was with Valeria because of the conversation that happened in the bathroom in episode 2.
Okay, now wait, aren't you the one who hid in the oven just so your parents could come find you?
What? Shut up. Mom, I thought that story was a secret.
Where Valeria brought back up the story that James told her about Merle hiding in the oven. So I'm pretty sure we're going to get around to that a little bit later. But as Maggie gets up out of the bed, she looks out the window and of course she can see Donald staring at his mutilated, deformed, dead, statued wife, Claire. So afterwards, Maggie checks in on Merle and of course she wants to know what happened to Claire and is she dead? And of course Maggie's like, I don't know what the hell happened, but yes, she is gone, of course, and you'll probably get to see it later on today. And of course she didn't say that last part, that was just me, but of course she'll definitely get to see it once she goes outside. Then a little bit later after this, Maggie and James meet up in the kitchen. So at this time, James tells Maggie that he's just planning to go check on one of the neighbors' places. She's like, you should take Ruben with you, but he's like, nah, I'm good. Of course he don't want to take Ruben with him because, you know, he's been smashing his wife. But Maggie, being as straight up and as bold as she is, she just went ahead and revealed it to him that she knows about it. She's like, oh, you don't want to go with the husband of the wife you've been fucking? Just straight up hit him with it, and the look on James's face is just like, wow, he's shitting himself right now. Of course he wants to know how she found out, but she's like, it don't really matter, you know, it is what it is, cat's out of the bag. And of course James starts telling Maggie how he regrets it and all of that shit, just trying to apologize, but you already know like what kind of situation this is, you know, I don't really need to explain the rest. They're gonna be dealing with some shit right now. And I think I may have forgotten to mention this, but during that whole conversation between James and Maggie, Ruben overheard what was happening from his room while Valeria was with him asleep. So he is completely caught up on all the tea. After this, James goes and checks on his mom. Ellen is like, hey, I think we need to cook the meat before it goes bad, because you have to keep in mind that they don't have any power. Then afterwards, we hop back over to Ruben and Valeria as Valeria is waking up, and she wants to chat and talk about all the shit that's happened so far with Ruben, but he's giving her a cold shoulder because she doesn't know that he knows what he knows. But she's asking him how somebody might come by the house and find out that they're there and all this other stuff, but he's like, it won't really matter because they don't even know we left. They don't even know where we are, which he has a point. If somebody stops by their place, it wouldn't matter anyway. Just like James's mom, Ellen wanted to wait by the road, but he's like, it wouldn't matter because it's Sunday, nobody's gonna come by. And I gotta also comment on the fact that Ruben has a lot of restraint because, I mean, of course, I'm not saying don't get violent with her, don't go upside her head or anything like that, but to not say anything after he found out, because I think Maggie took the right approach and just fucking dropped it on James. But for Ruben to not say anything to Valeria, too much restraint, man. Too damn much. You gotta speak up. You gotta say something. I gotta fuck her day up too, you know? You can't let me walk around knowing this shit all day. You gotta feel guilty as well. And then we could just talk about this shit later or move on or what the hell ever. But yeah, she can't go on all day not knowing that I know, you know? Fuck that. So after all of this, Ruben goes outside to meet up with Maggie at the animal clinic to give her a rifle, just for protection. But the thing about this scene is that he throws her a little hint to kind of let her know that he knows, but we don't really know if she picked up on it or not. But he tells her, you know, we'll get through this, the both of us, which is definitely a hint to her about them going through their cheating partners together. Because if he was talking about the whole barrier situation, he would just say, we'll get through it, all of us. So, and of course I don't really know if she picked up on that, but I'm just pointing out how detailed the dialogue was. And at this time, he also tells Maggie that it would be a stupid idea to let James go out into the woods alone, so he's agreeing to go with him. Then afterwards, Maggie goes and gets Donald from the barrier from staring at his wife because, he needs some help right now. Then afterwards, we see Ellen and Valeria go out to cover up Claire's body because it's pretty sad for everyone to just have to stare at that shit all day, so it makes sense that they would have gone and done that. Afterwards, we cut back over to James and Ruben as we see them in the stables preparing to ride out to see if they can go speak to the neighbors to see how close the barrier is to their property or if they're within it or not, because if they're not, then they can help. Then we cut back over to Donald and Maggie over at the clinic while she's patching him up, and he also reveals to her that he came across that body out in the woods. But before we can get more details in that situation and how much he was able to tell her about the body, we cut over to James and Ruben out in the woods as they're heading out, and they get to the barrier where we can see a snake's head that was poking across the damn barrier, and of course that shit is just like mutilated completely. Now at this time, while observing the snake who got fucked pretty bad out in the woods, James and Ruben start discussing how in the hell was this man able to find out where this barrier was. And of course, Ruben's thinking that maybe this guy was behind all of this shit, but at the same time, James is like, well, it seems like he did it to help us. Which I would say, of course, this guy did this to help y'all. He didn't have to tell y'all at all where the hell the barrier was. He could have just left that shit completely invisible and let them cross and find it on their own and turn into mutilated statues. You know what I'm saying? So I would definitely say he did this to help. But Ruben's response to James was actually pretty funny in this moment because he's still dealing with the information that he now has about the affair. So he's like, well, sometimes people act like one thing and they be something else. And it was just pretty funny. And I also have to mention the fact that Ruben told James that, hey, if one of us ended up over this line while we were way out here in the woods, nobody would know what happened. And it does seem like we can possibly look forward to Ruben maybe killing James while they're out here together, because he threw a little hint and he's like, yeah, I'm just saying, if one of us went over the line, nobody would know shit, just talking. But of course he wants to kill this guy for fucking his wife. But anyway, during this time, the two of them look up in the sky in the direction that they're headed towards the neighbor's house, and they can see vultures or crows flying in a circle above the trees. And of course that means that there are some dead bodies out there. So yeah, like Ruben said, it ain't looking too good. So during this time back at the house, we see Merle and Nicholas going to go visit Arlo in his room. And Nicholas points out to Merle how Arlo's been in his room going through the dictionary trying to learn words. Of course, to communicate, because this isn't Arlo. Of course, Nicholas has been humoring the whole situation like a lot of the rest of them, and he asked him what his name was. And Arlo points in the dictionary and says, I'm Harbinger. Now, a Harbinger is defined as something or someone that signals or foreshadows a future event, often associated with a change or something significant. So basically, this alien is telling Merle and Nicholas that it's there to warn them. And then they asked him where was Arlo, and he's like, Arlo's inside, he's safe. So basically in this moment we get confirmation that Arlo and Harbinger are occupying Arlo's body. And Arlo's not dead, he's kind of like in sort of like a sunken place type of situation, like Get Out sort of, but he can still occasionally take control. In this moment, Merle remembers from the night before that Arlo said that someone is coming to kill them. She's asking who. Then at this moment, Harbinger points at the word assassin in the dictionary and tells her that they need to hide or die, pretty much warning them that an assassin is on the way. Also at this time, something really strange happens. So Harbinger grabs Merle's arm and he's like, we gotta go, we gotta get the hell out of here, basically just panicking all over again. But in this moment, they end up spilling a glass of water on a painting of a rainbow in Arlo's room, and it begins to smear. And Arlo looks at it and he just stares for a while and he's like, not trapped. We're not trapped. At first he was just repeating that they're trapped, but now he's repeating that they're not trapped. So he grabs a jar from the shelf, pours out everything in it, grabs it to take it with him, and he wants Merle and Nicholas to go with him. Now, of course, immediately they're not sure because they were just told to watch her little brother. But at this time, Arlo takes control and he's like, you need to listen to me. So he's like, there's no time and we need to go right now. It's not far. We don't know what the hell isn't far from here, but he's like, it's not far. So it's pretty interesting because we don't know where they're heading just yet, but he's just saying that the assassin is coming, so they need to hurry. So after we get all that info from Arlo, we cut back outside where we see Ellen and Valeria sitting in picnic chairs out by the line because they want to sit by the road to see if they can wave for help if they see anyone. And actually, in this moment, someone pulls up in a van. Now it seems to be law enforcement because the guy walks up to the line, but then he just keeps walking and walks inside of the barrier, all calm and shit, like he knows all about everything that's going on. He even asked him, he's like, oh, okay, I guess y'all know about what's going on already. And Valeria is like, no, we actually don't know anything. So he's just like, all right, dude, just calm and cool as shit. And we don't know who the hell this is, but this could be the assassin that Arlo was warning them about. Then after the whole weird shit with the new guy who just popped up and just walked over the barrier, we cut out in the woods where we see Merle and Nicholas following Arlo. And eventually he ends up leading them to some sort of meteor or something that fell from the sky and crashed in the woods. And it seemed to have pulled in all of these forest animals that were just drawn to this meteor that crashed there, and they're all dead. But anyway, at this time, the whole rainbow thing starts to make sense. And Arlo grabs a piece of this space rock that has this rainbow liquid pouring out of it. And he takes that and pours it into the jar, and he says it's poison. And Merle and Nicholas are like, okay, what do we do with it? Arlo's like, or Harbinger is like, well, we drink it. So yeah, the damn kid is tripping because he wants us to drink poison. But he also said that we need this, and if we get it, we're no longer trapped, and you gotta drink it. So can you drink it and leave? They're kind of putting it together for us. Then after this, we cut back to Ruben and James, where we see them finally arriving to the neighbor's place. And for some reason in these shots over at the neighbor's place, you can no longer see the line. So I'm not sure how they know how much farther they can continue forward, but maybe the line is somewhere and we're just not seeing it in these shots. But after they arrive there, James sees a woman who was shot in the head sitting by a pool with the water running. And there's some instructions on the ground that say resuscitating a drowning victim. So what in the shit was happening here? And we just see dead bodies laid out all over the property. Like it's about 3 of them, it seems. So while they're at the neighbor's place, things get pretty damn crazy because we start cutting between James, Ruben, and Maggie, who's now out in the woods going to go check out that body that Donald mentioned. James goes in the neighbor's place and finds another dead body and just sees blood all over the place, like there was some kind of damn shootout that happened. He goes to go check out some area that looks like it's leading to the basement, and somebody just snatches his ass down into the basement. Then we see Ruben checking out like a barn area, and we don't really get to see what happens to him. And then we also get to see that Maggie knows the woman out in the woods, and apparently this is Carmen, their neighbor. And she's like, well, what the hell happened to her? And this is where episode 3 ends. So just like always, before we get into really discussing a whole lot of this shit, let's go ahead and recap episode 4. Before we do jump to episode 4 though, I do want to take note of the fact that there was also a mask laying on the ground at the neighbor's place also. Not the same exact mask as the one that we saw where the guy was wearing in episode 2, I believe, but still another mask. So what's going on with the mask and stuff? Obviously something alien related possibly happened here too. So at the beginning of episode 4, after Maggie finds the body and all of that stuff in the woods, we jump over to the important part with Arlo, Nicholas, and Merle, or Harbinger, whatever. I'll probably be using those interchangeably unless it really matters, which I guess this is probably one of those times where it actually matters. But Harbinger further explains the rainbow liquid to Merle and Nicholas and how they're basically fucked if they don't get this right. So if they drink too much of the rainbow liquid, which is apparently what happened to the animals out in the forest, they drank too much and they died. So if they drink too much before they cross the line, they'll die. If they don't drink enough and they cross the line, they'll still die. And if they choose to stay, the assassin will find them and then they'll die. So they have to do this shit exactly correct. They have to drink just enough to get over the line but not kill themselves. So this is going to be pretty interesting. Then we cut back over to the farm with Ellen, Valeria, and the new guy, Lieutenant Olsen, who's basically trying to get all the details on everything that's going on, and he wants to know how many people are currently on the farm and all of this stuff. But he's asking all of these questions before he gives them any details on why he's there or who he is. I mean, he tells them his name, but he doesn't give them much more information than that before he gathers what he needs, which more than likely is telling us that this guy is probably the assassin. But anyway, during this time, Maggie walks up. Lieutenant Olsen is telling Ellen, Maggie, and Valeria how he was chasing down Carmen because apparently she was acting weird and that his assignment was to come and find her since she was acting erratic. Then Lieutenant Olsen starts asking questions like, has anyone came in contact with her since she was in the woods last night? And of course they eventually get around to saying Arlo was the one who came in contact with her first. So Maggie looks down and sees that the guy has zip ties on him, he's got a gun and all this other crazy shit, so of course things are about to get serious. Unfortunately, Valeria and Ellen didn't pick up on this, so they just went ahead and told him, hey, Arlo, her kid, something's weird with him, go find him. But Maggie's the smarter one here, plus Arlo is her son, so of course she's going to be more protective. But Grandma Ellen should have been a lot more protective too. But Valeria, on the other hand, of course she don't really give a shit because it ain't her kid, and plus she's been fucking her husband, so of course she don't give a shit about Maggie's kids. But anyway, Maggie thinks quick on her feet and she's like, oh, Arlo's out in the barn, he's out in the house, come over here real quick, I'll walk you over there. So of course Maggie's already one step ahead. Then back out in the woods with Arlo, Merle, and Nicholas, we get a little bit more speck of information out of Harbinger, where Harbinger tells them that he's on a secret mission and that's why the assassin is after him. And during this time, a car pulls up, but before we get to see who it is, we cut away. Then we go back over to the barn with the good old lieutenant and Maggie, as she's asking a lot of questions because she seems to be the smartest person around so far. She's finding out that this guy ain't exactly who he says he is. And he does offer a little additional information on the barrier and what's kind of going on, sorta, and how this thing can be anyone and jump from person to person. Basically all the things that we know already. So she takes him up to the second floor of the barn, knocks his ass out, and restrains him on a pole. And also I gotta mention that at this time Valeria's up there with Maggie, and also in a low-key kind of way she reveals to Valeria that she knows about her and James. They end up having a little discussion about it, and Maggie reveals to Valeria how she's not mad about it and how she actually feels sad for her. And Valeria's like, why is that? Maggie's like, well, you're not the good person you thought you were, and that must really hurt. And Valeria says some dumb shit. She's like, man, you're just as cold as James said you were. And it's like, bitch, how is she supposed to feel? You had sex with her man and you guys are friends, so like, what the hell? Is she supposed to be remorseful? She's supposed to feel soft? You want her to cry? Like you're upset with her for being angry with you? Like, I already don't like Valeria, so hopefully she gets pushed over the line or some shit. But yeah, anyway, after that little discussion, Maggie heads out and leaves Valeria in charge of watching over the lieutenant, who eventually ends up waking up and starts trying to persuade Valeria to let him out. But then Ellen walks up and Valeria takes off and then keeps Ellen in control of watching out for him. Then we end up cutting over to the animal clinic, where we see that Maggie just needed a little break because she's starting to have another breakdown again since her kids are missing, which is very understandable. And Donald's able to give her a little pep talk, and it looks like he's able to give her some inspiration to get her back up on her feet. Alright, so now back out in the woods with Merle, Nicholas, and Arlo, or Harbinger, they come across the masked man again, who we find out later is McNabb. Of course, at first he's holding up his sign, but he sees the jar and immediately he knows what it is, so he crosses the line to get the jar. So at first he crosses the line and he's trying to aggressively take the jar from them, but after crossing the line he realizes that Arlo is Harbinger, and we find out that Harbinger and McNabb actually know each other from previously before. McNabb reveals to Harbinger that he was trying to save him before when he was inhabiting a woman, but he ran away. And he was like, I lost you, but damn it, I found you again. So McNabb is apparently, which we already know, is a big part of all of this. Then we jump back to the barn with Ellen and the lieutenant, as the lieutenant is able to trick Ellen's old ass into getting close enough so he can jump to her body. He's like, oh, I can't see, this blood is burning my eyes, why don't you come wipe it out for me? Just crazy as hell. So she gets close enough because apparently you have to be close enough with both aliens for them to jump into your body. After Ellen is close enough, the lieutenant is how we'll refer to him now, but since he's no longer the lieutenant, the assassin jumps into Ellen's body, and assassin Ellen now immediately kills the lieutenant. Afterwards, assassin Ellen cuts his zip ties and also cuts the tape, and then she bashes her head into the damn pillar to make it look like it was a struggle. Also, the assassin was able to magically stop Ellen's shaking because she takes medication for it. I forgot what her illness is that gives her the shakes, but he was able to immediately stop it. And now apparently they have a new problem on their hands because the assassin is now Ellen. And I really gotta admit that this aspect of this show really makes it pretty intriguing for me. I think it's really cool. And I really like this element of the show because it reminds me of like some of my favorite horror films, which is The Faculty from like the 90s, I believe. That was one of my favorite horror films with Usher and Josh Hartnett and Elijah Wood. I love that movie. Or even John Carpenter's The Thing. I love when there's an element of mystery like this to a story where it's kind of like a whodunit, but at the same time it's like sci-fi mixed in and it's brutal. You know, this is my kind of thing, and I like the direction that the show is heading in right now. So the episode ends with us cutting back to Ruben and James over at the neighbor's place, where we see Ruben inside of the silo where it looks like he's hypnotized by some sort of alien rainbow looking tree. So if the tree also has these rainbow colors and we put two and two together, this is very similar to the rainbow liquid that Harbinger found out in the woods from his meteor. And it's possible that this liquid is being stored by the tree. Also, the dogs outside the silo was drawn to the tree, just like the wild animals out in the woods was drawn to the rainbow liquid. So this is very similar. And I'm thinking possibly in this moment, Ruben is also drawn to the tree. Then also simultaneously, we cut down to the basement where we see James and some weird guy holding a rifle, smoking a cigarette, looks like he's bleeding out, ready to put a bullet in James because he believes that he is possibly an alien as well. Because he tells him, he's like, oh, you're back to finish the job. So of course he thinks that James is an alien. And before we get to find out who this guy is, the episode goes off. So I can already tell you guys that this character's name is Travis. Travis, and we will actually learn a lot more about Travis later on in later episodes. And we will also get to learn a lot more about the character McNabb, which was the black guy out in the woods that Merle, Harbinger, and Nicholas came across. But down in the comments, I've already mentioned to one of you guys that if you don't like it up to episode 4, then you're probably not going to really like this show, because this is pretty much the aspect of the show right now. These aliens, one of them is an assassin. He's going to be jumping around trying to kill Harbinger, and we get to see how this plays out. And honestly, if you're liking it so far, then it's definitely going to get a lot better. But if you're not feeling it after episode 4, then I honestly don't think you'll really like this show. But I thought this was a pretty good episode. We got a lot more information. Things are starting to move a little bit. There's a good amount of mystery that's involved here. The acting isn't amazing, but I think it's decent enough. I think the story is sort of good enough to kind of give the acting a pass at this point in time. And also, before I go, there's one thing I wanted to explain to you guys, and that's the gas mask. So humans use the gas mask to protect them from the aliens jumping inside of them and inhabiting their body. So that's just one of those things I just wanted you guys to keep in mind throughout the show, is that if you see a character wearing one of the gas masks, then more than likely they are protected from the aliens, which means they are not inhabited by one. So yeah, like I said, that's just one of those things to keep in mind about the show. And this also more than likely means that at the neighbor's place where we saw a gas mask, someone was also protected from the alien there, but it was removed. Which character was it? Who knows? Maybe we'll find out later, but keep that in mind. But like I said, we got to continue to see it play out and see what you guys think about it. But as always, I want to thank you guys for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you later.